How's it going, guys? This is another Daincast coming at you with a game from Countess this time, another subscriber and friend of the channel, playing a game of PvP against Adastra, someone without a clan. So it's the Drunken Outlaws versus someone who's clanless. And it's a PvP, which is, I know, a matchup that Countess doesn't like a whole lot. But we'll have to see what she came up with in this game. See if she mixes up a little bit. It's obviously a pretty crazy matchup at the moment. There's lots of proxies. There's lots of shenanigans. I know that both these players are in Masters. So I think Adastra is about 4,900 as a protoss. And Countess currently, I think, is about 4.7, 4.8. So a fairly high-level game between both of these players. Both of them are going to be starting out with a very standard gateway on the ramp opening. Countess leaving a nice little gap here so that she can eventually block it with a pylon if she needs to block the adepts from coming in. Adastra deciding to go for his first gateway on completely tight with the ramp, so obviously he'll be wanting to put his second gateway in the same position as Countess to leave a place for a pylon to block it. Small little note on this game is that you don't want to be leaving a one pylon block or one unit block here. You want to leave the two because you're always going to want to block it with a pylon, which blocks it either way. But if you leave only a one space gap, you won't be able to have archons go in and out of your base, which is not a super common thing to happen in PvP, but it can happen, and it can be very annoying when it does happen. So you definitely want to leave a 2 unit wide gap. If you're unsure about how wide a 2 unit wide gap is, just move when you are placing the building, if you have grid turn on, you just move it over one more space. You just shift it over and it'll sort of snap one place over. So it looks like Countess is going for a fairly early scout here. Just want to see what's going on. You want to have the scout arrive in the base around, about 150, just to see where this pylon is. This is the second pylon of Astra. So this tells Countess that there's no proxy shenanigans going on. At least there shouldn't be. However, Adastra has gone for a third pylon on the fourth base of his own, and he's going for a Twilight Council here. So really trying to be a little bit sneaky by going for that second pylon in base and adding the third. This does delay it just a little bit, but it's not a big enough delay to make a huge deal. Adastra has had to compromise here and delay their units in order to get this out on time with the pylon. Interestingly enough, Countess is also going for some proxy shenanigans with her third pylon. So actually, we've got 1, 2, 3 pylons here and a fourth pylon for Countess down here. And we'll have to see what she does decide to proxy of her own. Countess does have the 2 stalkers out to Adastra's only 1, so a little bit less of a compromise for Countess. And she's deciding to use both her chronos on the stalkers because she knows that something is up here. She's definitely fearing a proxy Stargate, so she's rallying the next 2 stalkers in the mineral line, while the other 2 stalkers stay out front just in case there's any adept shenanigans. Adastra sending another sneaky probe out, so potentially another proxy location over here. Meanwhile, going for a dark shrine at the original proxy location, and Countess still not using this proxy pylon for anything, just there potentially just in case she wants to add something there later. And she does just decide to go for an expansion of her own, but she does not yet know about the shenanigans. She does not yet know about the DT. She's kind of expecting there to be a Oracle flying in, but since there hasn't been one at this sort of expected time, she does build and cancel a shield battery, but now she decides it's time to move out onto the map and see what's going on. She's got 4 stalkers plus these 2 at the front leading the charge, and since there's no Stargate, she might as well be aggressive with this high amount of units she's invested into, and deciding to go for a robotics facility back at home for any kind of mid-game needs she might have, whether it needs to be a drop, whether it needs to be detection for, I don't know, Dark Templar, or for an Immortal if there's some kind of blink play coming from Adastra. So Adastra's decided to also go for their own expansion. It's a little bit later than Countess's, but it's still getting up at a reasonable time. So if this were to get up, he wouldn't be too far behind. But the DT does warp in to save it, and Countess is going to have to pull these stalkers back to save them. So Adastra's only got these 4 stalkers, so a very small army because this tech investment is so much from Adastra. You can see just the difference in the builds here. Countess has got a much higher stalker count, and she's gone for a robotics facility early enough that this detection is going to be out just in time. This other DT is warped in from this pylon. Finally, we see what Adastra is using this pylon for. Does this Does this DT get in? No, she decides to force field it out, and the observer comes out just in time, so she's going to snipe both of these Dark Templar if she's able to chase this down. The only problem with chasing down Dark Templar with your own army, it doesn't matter how big your army is, the observer just isn't fast enough. So while the stalkers might be able to catch it if you were to chase it, the observer will not be able to catch it fast enough. So Countess only settling to kill one of these DTs, but I don't think she's in too bad of a position here. She's getting her own forge now. And she's got a faster expansion. So she's on 32 workers to also Adastra's 32, but she's had a little bit more time to mine from it. So she's definitely got a bit of an edge in this game. You can see in the army count, she's at 29 to 15 of Adastra. So this significant investment doesn't actually pay off for Adastra. DT tech isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely not the ideal situation, because now Adastra has to build their own robotics facility. They have to build their own forge, and these buildings are out on the map. Adastra does decide to go for charge. That's a really important mid-game upgrade in Protoss versus Protoss. But if Countess were to find this and kill it, that would be really awkward for Adastra. But since Countess is a little bit scared of the DTs coming in, she's kind of got to keep her army at home right now, because this is her only form of detection. So if she were to move out on the map, it would be much, much better for Adastra. So in this kind of situation, it's much more advantageous for Countess to just sit in her 2 bases and macro up, knowing that she's probably got the advantage overall. The army is starting to close. The gap between the armies is starting to close, rather. Countess only at 35 army to Adastra's 27, but at this phase in the game, you can't really tell too much based on the army count, because although Countess invested a significant amount in these stalkers drop off massively over the course of the game, and they actually become a detriment to your army, because you don't want too much supply in these stalkers that end up getting just mowed down by immortals, because most players make quite a few immortals in this matchup for that very reason. So not a fantastic position for Countess as this game has gone on, despite the fact that Adastra's tech didn't really pay off in the financial investment. The army investment still hasn't really been leveraged by Countess early on, and so now Countess is deciding to go for a drop to try and get an additional advantage, to try and whittle things off. There's a spotting probe for Adastra, but I don't think he sees the drop come in. So Countess is going to try and drop these 2 immortals in, and the goal of this drop really is to snipe this forge, but this forge is in a really nice position for Adastra. And so there's actually 4 sentries coming in. I assumed it would be immortals, which it is immortals, but the sentries are going to block the ramp, and these immortals are absolutely going to wreak havoc on this base. They're actually able to snipe the robotics facility, although since there were Archons for Adastra, he was able to bust up this ramp without any issues. However, the immortals do some damage by killing the robotics facility, so Adastra is going to have to rebuild that sooner rather than later. It's a very important building in this matchup. You want to be making observers and warp prisms and disruptors and things like that going into the mid to late game. So both players are around 40 workers, so Countess is on 44 and Adastra is on 42. Countess deciding to just build a whole bunch of pylons, probably got supply blocked a little bit, and just wanting to make sure that she can warp in units at her leisure. Probably not going to probe up too much. Neither of the players really want to probe up too much past 44, because at this point, economy takes the backseat in this matchup. Neither player wants to be the one to lose their 3rd base. Meanwhile, Countess keeps these 2 immortals alive, and she's just going to snipe off this assimilator and pick up and leave. I really like this, just being very conservative, not trying to get units, not trying to be greedy, just getting as many kills as she can. But here is the army parading towards Countess's base. There is quite a few units here, and it's mostly Archons and Zealots, which is a very scary army to try and fight if all you've got is Stalkers and Sentries. But Countess does add 2 Archons of her own, and she's got an immortal plus lots of force fields, so she can manage to segment off this army and prevent. So she actually snipes. This is perfect, the force field preventing plus the Zealots preventing the immortals from leaving. She gets 2 immortals for free, and now the stalkers aren't such dead weight in her army because the immortals aren't going to have that high damage against them. So Countess has got a massive army here, 80 army supply nearly to Adastra's 53. Neither player is going for a 3rd base. Adastra's on the bottom end of this ramp trying to desperately warp in some DTs to break off this army advantage, but Countess's army is just massive at this point. They both have +1 attack, neither of them going for a third. It's all going to be about positioning and decision making at this point. Countess's army deciding to tragically move out, and Adastra's is just like 2 ships in the night, walked right past each other. So now Adastra has to make the decision. Does he recall and try to defend his second base at home, or does he go for the base race? And it looks like Adastra's just realizing, I don't actually have the better army. It's probably better for me to do a base trade and then recall. Countess, though, in position to attack Adastra's third base. She doesn't know if there is a third here, wasting valuable seconds. Maybe it's a better attack angle either way, but Adastra's already attacking. His units are already in Countess's base, and he's going to start killing pylons. So the warp ins from Countess are not going to be happening from these gateways. There's not going to be anything else from these buildings. The probes aren't mining, but Countess has also leaped on to Adastra's base, and both players trying frantically to kill as much as they can before they recall and actually go to fight each other's armies. Adastra's army, not quite as big, so it's going to take a little bit more time to kill Countess's base than Countess will take to kill Adastra's base. Countess having a nice split here, but look at all these idle units. Countess feels like the damage is done, so maybe she recalls now and tries to fight. Can she clump up everything properly and actually recall and save her own base? Adastra's got half of his units at the bottom half. Is Countess going to walk her whole army down there to try and save this base? It's going to be a really difficult position for her to be in. Does Countess have any probes out on the map? No, Adastra does, so it's actually looking like a pretty good position for Adastra. They still have a nexus down, they still have probes mining, and they still have some of the tech left in their base, so it's a very difficult position. But if Countess can get in here and kill everything without a recall, it might leave Countess in a position where she's got a big enough army to make this happen. But there isn't a single probe for Countess out on the map. Countess is now being revealed because she has only these buildings left, so Adastra knows if she can kill these buildings, then they will actually kick Countess out of the game. That is the win condition. But Countess leaping on this, cornering Adastra in the very edge of Countess's natural and absolutely cleaning up everything nearly for free. So now Countess is left with 67 army supply now, and still has an observer, so the DTs aren't going to be doing too much. And now Countess is in a desperate position. There's one single pylon left out on the map. Countess wisely deciding to leave a detector and a small little army that is bigger than whatever Adastra has. Adastra has 5 workers and a dream, 0 army supply. So Countess now has to spread out, sending hallucinated Phoenix all over the map, and has to figure out a way to kill all of Adastra's buildings before Adastra can build up into a big army to steamroll over this pitiful little force that's been left at this pylon. So if Adastra was able to just make even a void ray or something to snipe this pylon, that would be it for Countess. This is the last hope that Countess has in this game. But she does have a massive advantage, which is this huge army waddling across the map. She's got such a big army, she can afford to spam hallucinations everywhere. She can decide where she wants to go. She has complete map control. She's even got a warp prism with zealots in it, ready to fly around the map and snipe any buildings that are left out on the map. There is a single probe here from Adastra returning home, having a dream of coming back home after the long journey abroad, placing sneaky proxy pylons to mine minerals for the glorious motherland to eventually lead to a victory. If this game were to go on for another 20 minutes without Countess doing anything, it would be a victory for Adastra, without a doubt. There is no mining for Countess. But Adastra realizing that it's a very difficult position to play from because there's no army for them. It would take them another 10 minutes to build up an economy, and there's no way that they're going to be able to do that before Countess kills their units. So Countess looks like she's staying in this game after the victory scream just to see what is left over in Astra's base, but it's, obviously not very much. Yes, there's a few probes. Yes, on paper it looks a little bit, but if this happens, you have to trade your army somewhat fairly. You have to get something of a trade for your army. You need to recall. You need to do something to prevent Countess from completely steamrolling. But because Countess kept such a big army alive, she was able to translate that into a victory in the end. So really well played from Countess. It was nice to see the decision making in the late game there. It was looking very scary for a while, but the +2 upgrades on the units and the nice surround and the overall just better macro from Countess, I think, is what led to a victory in this case. So well played from Countess, and I look forward to seeing some more games from you.